letter B and letter C, I'll just go through kind of briefly. In letter B, de Tocqueville talks about you could still have a democracy in the sense that people are electing their rulers, but it's no longer a free government, even though they can, because really the government's in control. The people are just every 4 years or whatever, just choosing some rulers, but then they sit back and the rulers do everything. It's not really actually a self-governing society anymore, because the people are not really involved in the decision making. And letter C, the point here is that really there's something kind of subhuman about people who are being totally not taking any responsibility over their lives. And this is not really a sustainable setup. So he sees in the end this society will either disintegrate into an absolute despotism where there's not even elections anymore. The people are just totally under the control of the government. Or the people will get sick of living this way and will reestablish a free government where the people are acting more responsibly in their personal lives. We'll talk about in another activity later on what I mean when I use the words acting responsibly. But let's go on to letter D and just finish up this activity. This is a passage from one of the advisors of Lyndon Johnson. So Lyndon Johnson was president in the 1960s, and this is his advisor, Harry McPherson. And I'm just going to take us through this quotation and make a couple of points about it. McPherson begins by saying that in his day, the 1960s, mid-1960s, a new philosophy of government had emerged since New Deal days. In essence, it held that our problems were more of the spirit than of the flesh. So he's seeing the New Deal as the philosophy of the New Deal being that government needs to provide for the needs of the flesh of the people, food, shelter, and clothing, whereas he's seeing that it's not enough for government to provide people with food, shelter, and clothing, because people also have unhappiness and problems of the spirit that where they also need help from government. He focuses on some of the difficulties people are having. He focuses, for example, on middle-class women bored and friendless in the suburban afternoons, fathers who work at meaningless jobs, come home and slump in front of the TV set, and when they come home, sons and daughters in need of relevance. They have all their physical needs met. They're middle class, upper middle class, but they're depressed. And so then he goes on to say what would change this was a creative public effort. When he uses the word public, he means government. Government has to do something about this. This is a really departure from the original understanding of the purpose of government. In the U.S., there was an understanding that people would have a large area of responsibility with a little help from government. So if you go back to some of these examples from that older way of looking at things, if there's a woman who lives in the suburbs who's bored and doesn't have friends, then really it's her responsibility to do whatever she needs to do to become happier. You know, pick up the phone, call a neighbor, volunteer, whatever it is that she needs to do, and that there's this assumption that people really are responsible for taking steps to bring about their own happiness. Whereas for McPherson, if a middle-class woman is bored and friendless in the suburban afternoon, he seems to be treating her, at least it seems to me, as kind of helpless and in need of being rescued by the federal government or some government to make her life better. This is the one observation I will make here is that in order to bring about this newer vision of McPherson and LBJ, it would require a increase in the power of government, especially of the federal government, and so this would be a good example of the liberal way, the modern liberal way of looking at things, where there's seen this need for an increase in the power of government.